Today we are covering GLPs, peptides, and crackdowns. Oh my. Yes, so this is going to be our compliance related webinar. I know that so many of you had so many questions about this, so we are giving the people what they want today. My name is Chelsea Connor. I will be your host today. And thank you for joining. A few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box on your screen at any point during the presentation. We'll be checking them before the end for our Q&A session, along with the questions that you guys sent in advance. Another note is this webinar is being recorded, so if for any reason you have to drop before we get to the end, or you just want to watch it again after you're done because we had so much fun, that will be an option for you. So you'll receive an email after the webinar is done with a link to review your recording. One last housekeeping note for you guys. If you are able to and you have not already muted yourself, please do so before we begin the webinar just to be sure that our lovely speakers are able to get their lovely guidance across. All right. And then just a note to keep our lawyers happy. Speaking of compliance, I will let you guys take a quick look at this screenshot if you need to, and it will be in the deck. But this is just our traditional CYA to make sure that we are covering our bases just like you're going to learn to. So, meet our speakers for today are two wonderful women. You guys know them, you love them, the co-founders and lead trainers of Injectables EDU, both also owners of their own med spas. Cassie and Suzanne, welcome to your webinar. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yay, glad to be here. Oh, Cassie, you're muted.
We're super excited to be here. This is such a great topic. I know I'm like
Mhm.
chomping at the bit to get all the answers from Sharon as well.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you so much. Yeah, great to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yay! Yay! Speaking of our guest speaker, you guys, thank you for your patience. We were actually working through some technical issues. So many of you joined us here today that we couldn't get her in, but problem
That's a
is
good problem to
solved.
have.
It's a good problem.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So the gang is all together now, and now we are ready to roll. So, speaking of our guest speaker, Sharon Adelman, she is a partner at Lengia Law. She has over 2 decades of experience um, in this field. She is one of the most trusted voices when it comes to med spa and healthcare compliance. For those of you who have joined us at the last Injectables EDU Summit, you will recognize her from there. She gave some really great talks on compliance as well as our panel session. And she will be joining us at this year's Injectables EDU Summit as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to it. It
Awesome.
was,
So we're
yeah.
so
It was
excited to have
super
you
fun.
here today. Yeah, a little sneak peek of what we're all going to get in just a few months. So before we kick into the good stuff, just a reminder that in, gosh, just about 2 months, we have our big conference of the year, the Injectables EDU Summit. We will be there covering compliance, business, marketing, injection techniques, really everything from A to Z when it comes to either starting or growing your injectables business. So if you have not already snagged your ticket yet, it is the time to do so. We'll talk about that a little more at the end because we may or may not be ending this webinar with a little treat for our viewers. So no spoilers. First, we're going to get into compliance. So, with that said, GLPs, peptides, and crackdowns. Oh my. We are going to get into a lot of the hot topics, and we're going to start off with this new bill in Indiana that has been all over the internet. Everyone's been asking about this new bill in Indiana. And I was hoping, Sharon, could you give us a little bit of background on what passed in Indiana and what that means for the med spa owners who live and work there?
Oop, Sharon, you're
Oh,
muted.
we've got you muted.
Oops. See if I can fix it. Oops. How do I get her? I'll make her a co-host and then she can hear.
You know what, audience? This just goes to show that you can't be good at everything, and tech is just not not our strongest suit. But that's okay. We are getting close to getting Sharon off mute. That's when you know she's about to say something really good.
Well, and a little background that I can fill in while we're doing that. So there's been a few things of late that we've seen come through. We've seen this Indiana precedent being set. We've seen a crackdown in New York on compliance of specific med spas. And we recently, oh, Sharon, you're back. We recently saw FDA put out some official verbiage. So there's like, it's an exciting time to be in the legal world right now. So I'll, Sharon, go ahead and take it away and fill us in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, so Indiana passed a new bill. It essentially goes into effect in January 2027, and effectively, it's broadening oversight over med spas. So, just a couple takeaways: med spas need to be registered with the Board of Pharmacy. There needs to be a responsible person associated with the clinic. They need to be more cognizant of their of from where they're sourcing their compounded products. So there's, they need to have adverse event reporting. There's much more record keeping. It's just much broader. Clearly, there's much more oversight over operations, and it's showing that the boards are working in tandem. And it's, I think for some of the states that have not had enforcement traditionally, it's a massive change. It's pretty earth-shattering change. We've been doing a lot of work in neighboring states like Ohio and Michigan, and they have similar things going on. So it's not as much of a surprise. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's a massive expansion of oversight bill. So it's definitely workable. It's just you just have to take the right steps, to stay compliant.
Are they issuing like a toolkit for med spa owners to be able to be compliant? Like, I would think that would be a really helpful thing from the board of pharmacy to be like, hey, owners, we want to help you do the right thing, have XYZ. And this is what it looks like.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think these things are usually a work in progress. I know, like, for example, Ohio, we've done a lot of work with they have a very robust audit program. They're very active in enforcements. They are very strict with enforcements. We have a lot of audits right now in Ohio. They have amazing, I mean, the silver lining is they have great resources on their website in terms of
Hmm.
courses and, FAQs and steps you should be taking. So I think it's probably a work in progress. Again, they first set the bill and then they're probably going to be ramping up their content. But it's
Because
just
I
it's
think
just
that's
incredibly important to get ahead of it. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's such a hard thing. And I know so many calls that we field are what's the right thing to do in my state? How do I do that? And unfortunately, people are really struggling trying to do the right thing with just no information. So it's great to pass these rules and laws. And I think we all agree that better oversight will be best for everybody. Like good oversight is good. But not telling you how to do it is or what the requirements are or making it ambiguous is such a hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously we help a lot of clients kind of navigate those compliance complexities. Again, a lot of these are are themes that are mimicked in other states. So again, we're happy to help, and it's just unfortunate that a lot of times they take a step, but then they don't the law needs to the actual
Hmm.
content needs to catch up. And we've even seen audits in New York or in other states in which auditors come in and then mid-audit after parts of the business have been shut down, services are not being provided, they realize, oh, that other little piece of scope can be incorporated and then they're freed. But again, this should have been a lot of these things should have been done before such drastic measures were had. So it's just really important to be, working with the right people. Again, we're happy to help. Obviously, you guys are incredible, but just be proactive and just operate with the highest compliance standards. I think at least at a minimum, it'll just mitigate, the negative
Hmm.
consequences. So
And I found, and I know Cassie and I have both had fun interactions with various boards over the years, because if you're in business long enough, it will happen. It's not a matter of you necessarily doing anything wrong. It's a matter of time and statistics. But what we found over and over again is that it's rewarded when you really are doing your best. Like when you are showing that you are making the effort to do the right thing, please don't think that you're going to get like cuffed and hauled off into jail here. Like that's not what's happening. I mean, I honestly kind of thought that that could happen back in the day when I first started. And now I realize it's more of like an investigation. It's a pain in the ass. And if anyone's been audited by, you know, the IRS or anywhere else, like it is a real pain in the butt. And you definitely need help with someone like Lingia Law, who is an amazing advocate for you. And what's also great, and I'll do a little plug for Lingia here, is that they know med spa. And I don't particularly care if your brother-in-law is an attorney, or, you know, your neighbor is like, oh, I went to law school, you know, didn't pass the bar, but I can help you with that. You know, no. Nope, nope, and nope. Just like we don't want a general practitioner doing our gallbladder surgery, you do not want an attorney that is not versed in this stuff managing your investigation.
Yeah. The other thing I feel like I heard is that it's a little bit of a moving target right now and that it is highly state specific. So is that accurate, Sharon? Okay.
Yeah. So I know I know everyone's kind of thinking, this is in Indiana. How does this affect me? It is, as you said, it is a moving target with other states. I mean, I think Indiana was pretty clear in their own specifics in the bill, but with respect to other states, it's really the same principles. I mean, besides the registration with the pharmacy board, besides having this kind of responsible person on site, that responsible person can be a nurse, a nurse practitioner, which a lot of clinics actually do have. So it's a lot of the same themes, just operating at the highest level of compliance. Have good record keeping. Are you onboarding patients properly? Are the appropriate people onboarding the patients? Do you have patient specific orders? Is everything in the EMR? So yeah, I mean, a lot of these themes are replicated state by state. If you just operate at the highest level and with the most preparedness, you should be fine. And yeah, and again, as as Suzanne was saying, intent matters. The boards, if you intend to do the right thing and follow their directive, they notice. What they don't like is people who either don't listen or they they don't comply and they give them a second chance and they still don't comply. That those types of things, it's those are more, frankly, more important than being completely 100% on top of things the first time. So
Absolutely. How much of the statutes are things that people are kind of doing already? Like how much of it is, I guess, people are kind of doing already by trying to do their best? Like, or versus how much of it is stuff that like, wow, we really need to go above and beyond to make sure that we're compliant in these areas?
Yeah, so I think, I think if people are, there are multiple components of this Indiana bill. So if people are onboarding patients appropriately, so, procedures that are, and again, every state is different, but there are a lot of themes that overlap. There's some products and services that are clearly medical and some that are kind of grayish, but I think a good rule of thumb is anything that affects the inside of the body or below the dermis, that's medical. So in those cases, it's really important to have that initial onboarding done correctly and the appropriate people doing it. Nurse
So
practitioner,
when you say
physician
onboarding, you're
assistant.
saying doing a proper good faith exam, documenting it in a timely manner, co-signing, putting in appropriate patient specific orders, signing those orders appropriately, making sure those are in the chart and documented on each patient. Just want to line item it so that yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So that, if you're doing those, I think in any state, you would be in very, very good shape in the event of an audit. Again, going back to that corporate practice of medicine, some states restrict it, some states do not. In the states that do, anyone who's not a physician or an NP with full practice should own a management company, like a non-clinical company, and not the clinic directly. That's another huge big ticket item that auditors look at. So are you structured properly? Are you onboarding the patients properly? Like if you're doing those two things correctly, you're way ahead of the game. With Indiana, they want to go a little bit further. They want, the clinic to be registered with the Board of Pharmacy. There are some states that actually require that, like Tennessee, for example. We've done a bunch of audits in Tennessee. And they actually require that. It's not a big deal, but it can be something that trips people up. Like these are just technicalities that if you don't follow, it can start an audit. It's an easy thing to fix. It's just something you have to keep in mind. But that's like something that specifically you should know to do. Like in Indiana, it's not common in other states. Tennessee is another one that does require that, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
It feels like you can save yourself a lot of money and certainly heartache. And like Suzanne and I both speak from experience on this one. If you proactively probably get with like the Langia membership and get these checklists and proactively make sure that you understand, do you need corporate practice of medicine? Who can do what? Scope of practice is something that I've heard you say repeatedly as really being like a hot button issue. Because if you do get audited, it just also, even if you're doing everything right or what have you, or needing to make changes, it gets very expensive very fast.
Yeah. And it's very, very stressful if you're doing things retroactively. I mean, it's already stressful to begin with, and it's a marathon. And all you can do is just put the best case forward. And if you have all of the elements there, or most of them, the first time that auditor comes in, you're in much better shape than if you're playing catch up. We just had an audit. We have a lot of audits these days. We just had one last week in California, and medical director. And I know we're going to be getting to that, but medical director never has been to the clinic. It's through one of those kind of big, you know, um, bigger like med spa box companies. Never been to the clinic. That's what was told to the auditor, um, who reviews your work. It's an RN. She owns the clinic. Her website, clearly does not list the medical director. I mean, all these things are absolutely required. These are easy things that could have been done beforehand. And when I pointed out issues with their website, she fixed it in 5 minutes. I mean, she actually personally had access to her website. So being proactive is really the way to do it. Do it before you need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very different game if, being retroactive versus doing this in a planned way. So definitely agree.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing here is that for people who are living or operating out of states who haven't had legislation like this, like what's in Indiana passed, the best thing they can be doing is being really proactive about their compliance and putting that top of mind to prevent any kind of chaos in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Indiana, it was never kind of viewed as a super high enforcement state. So it's a little bit of a surprise, frankly. Ohio, Michigan, they have a very deep track record of this type of enforcement. So to see this in Indiana, and then obviously the neighboring states take notes, and then that just expands. So yes, anyone should be taking notes from this, because even though it doesn't necessarily apply in your state, it may very soon, and you just want to be prepared.
Right. I'm gonna move on to another one of our hot button topics that you actually just talked on, absentee medical directors. Can we talk a little bit more about, what are the real risks of having an absentee medical director for your practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that you can kind of approach that from many different angles. So legally, there's some states that permit it. They permit an out of state medical director. So a lot of these kind of big box med spa in a box companies, that there's a legal basis for what they're doing. But is that the best practice? If you don't have your medical director nearby, if you have an emergency, that's not best practice. So even though it might technically be legally okay, it's better to have someone who's physically closer. So in the event you have and there's some multi-state medical directors that are actually very experienced, and they're great to work with, and they would actually help with some of the corporate practice of medicine requirements, for example. In that case, it's always good to have like a backup medical director who's closer by, so that you kind of fill in that hole. Worst case scenario, you're in an audit and the auditor asks you, has your medical director ever visited your clinic? And you say they've never visited my clinic, because that's the way that some of these practices, some of these other adjacent companies operate, it's just their system that the medical director just doesn't visit, but they're always accessible by phone, which is good, but they actually have never physically been there. And I just think it's so important, to have that extra layer of physical proximity. And the spirit of all of that, obviously, is that people want the medical director to be more involved and know what's happening in the clinic. So if you've never visited the clinic physically, you clearly don't know all the details as to what's happening there. And again, every state is different. I was in a hearing in New Jersey a couple weeks ago, physician hearing. Every single detail of that clinic, he was grilled on to the depth of, do you ice your GLP when do you provide ice to the patients when they take them home? Who has access to the cabinet for controlled substances? What is your patient onboarding process? How many days a week are you at the clinic? I mean, and he physically is active, so he could answer all those questions. But every single detail was grilled. So every state is different, but I think the lessons learned is that just having someone just randomly in some other state who has no idea what you're really doing, you need to add to that. Even if you're working really well with them, have someone who's closer by as either a backup or just consider just getting someone who's closer by and who knows what's going on.
When
And
someone asks, go ahead, Chels.
I had a follow-up question, but you go ahead.
So we had a question about people doing concierge medicine where they're traveling. Like there is any takeaways for that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of just goes back to the spirit of it. I mean, has the physician been involved in drafting the protocols? What procedures are you offering? Do you follow like hygienic procedures? Again, it goes back to involvement. And if there's no brick and mortar, what is their depth of involvement with how you practice? So in states that permit mobile services, I think it's just important to kind of peel back the onion and look at what are they kind of getting at with all these requirements. And it's not always necessarily physically being there. In some states it is, in some states it's not, but it's really what is their involvement, with the day to day. And it could be even as a first step, just have they even reviewed your protocols?
Mm-hmm.
Have you collaborated with them on your protocols? I mean,
So
that's
I guess I would
one
lean
important
into,
step.
it's nice to have someone that's a medical director that actually knows about this stuff. So like we have a lot of our people that work with Guardian Medical, for instance. They'll be at Summit coming up and you can meet with some people from Guardian, which is super helpful. And they're really up on, and compliance is their, banner. They really want to do the right thing by people and offer those services. And they are really up on, they're not legal, but they have attorneys and they're doing their best to make sure that you're being compliant with medical directors. And
Yeah.
it may not be true in all states, right? As to your point.
Yeah, and Guardian's great. I mean, we actually, there some of these firms we've kind of grown up together. Like we've known Guardian when they were kind of starting out, when we were starting out. So some of these companies we've kind of grown up together. And yeah, Guardian definitely prides themselves on really great protocols. They have experienced practitioners. But again, a lot of these companies do have the remote medical director. So if someone is planning to work with like a Guardian or a Guardian type entity, it's really important to have someone who's closer by as well. That's kind of when you have that backup,
What
additional.
about someone who's close by but not remotely knows anything about med spa? Like they get their friend who's a, gastroenterologist.
So the idea is like, what would you do in an emergency? I mean, do you have a
Yeah.
physician close by? So I think it's more important just to have a trusted physician who would be reliable. And if you do have that backup physician, they can take training courses. I
Mhm.
mean, there are ways to bulk up on knowledge. And I would highly recommend that. There are a lot of GI doctors or anesthesiologists who get into this, but they take courses. If you're going to have someone sign on to do that and they're taking on that liability, it's just good to get training.
Yeah, and we actually offer a medical director through Injectables EDU. We offer a medical director specific neurotoxin training class that gets you that certificate that you can turn in if you ever need it. And it talks to them about what their responsibilities and educates them on their liability as well. But it's in a very positive, it's put out by us, like we're advanced practice providers. So, it's very in a positive spin as well, but still realistic about what you do need to be doing as a medical director. And at the end of the day, you've got this neurotoxin specific training that can be turned in the event that there is any like DHP investigation sort of deal. I mean, for example, Sharon has supported me through an investigation, and my medical director is local. He's available, all that. He is a GI doc, but he's taken specific training. So I think I think everything is a spectrum of like, yeah, of course, it's the most compliant to have a plastic surgeon who's right up the street, who's on site, or, talking to every patient there. Where is the line between practicality and, the most compliant? So I think it's almost like you can just say like having somebody that's out of state and available and involved is less compliant than XYZ, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. There are certain things that are just not allowed, and I think trying to fit everything into its place on the spectrum is more what it's about.
Yeah, I think that's a great, yeah. Spectrum is a really good term, frankly, because you want to have as many factors going
Because you
through
want to
as
have as
possible.
many factors going.
And not everything might be perfect at the same time, but it's a case.
Mhm.
And you just have to, check off as many of those boxes as possible.
Great. All right. Should we move on to the next slide?
Absolutely.
I know we have so many questions for you. And one thing I
Yeah.
want to, because I know we will not get to all of them and we will run out of time. So I do just want to also point out, I know a lot of you are already coming to Summit. But if you do, Sharon and Sarah, who owns Langia, are going to be there and they're going to be answering your direct questions. And we're trying to get them to even make little appointments for one-on-ones and things like that. So it's a very small conference. Like you will buckle up, Sharon. You're going to need 2 glasses of wine because we are going to be taking full advantage and really peppering you that entire weekend. And I know you don't mind. You're a great sport.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it. It was a great conference. So definitely looking forward to it. Great group.
Peptides. That's another
Oh,
doozy.
peptides.
Doozy.
I saved the best for last, ladies. Peptides and GLP-1s. I think, there's so many people out there that think that either peptides or GLPs are going to be what saves their business, what really turns things around. And I guess my first question is just, what do you think of that? Is GLPs and peptides this be all end all to succeed in this world?
Yeah, I mean, GLPs, obviously we have the recent hims and hers, FDA action. So that's kind of a little bit of a moving target. Same thing, peptides as well. Peptides is these things are so I guess it's a little bit bifurcated. So I would start with peptides first. A lot of peptides are not approved by the FDA. So a lot of people are very also, besides helping their business, they're also really mission driven. They believe in them. Like just incredible results. So there's higher liability associated with it. In order to kind of, again, it's that spectrum, mitigate your risks. It's super important to, I would say, be low key in terms of marketing. Some people make these really exaggerated claims. I wouldn't mention like FDA approval. Sometimes patients can get confused because a lot of these are not FDA approved. Have really great consents that are specific to the therapy, and also disclose the fact that these are not FDA approved. I mean, it's not a consent is a wonderful thing to have and it's critical, but it's not the only thing. You need to have a conversation with the patient so they're clear. These are not, some of these things are not FDA approved. I think having really good insurance, we actually have some contacts who cover not FDA approved products from an insurance standpoint. That's super important. You want to be, because a lot of times non-FDA approved products are an exception to coverage. So having a company that actually covers those is really helpful.
Do
And
they
then I guess
exist?
yeah, actually
Okay.
we have a name of, I can send it, send it to you. He's
All right.
he says he covers it. again, I think anything with insurance, you have to read all of the language, but he said he covers a lot of things that other people don't. So
Okay. Yeah, we see that with insurance coverage that a lot of people have a lapse and they don't double check that their insurance is covering all the procedures they do. And I'll just do a plug that everyone, every year when you renew your malpractice, you need to go through all the procedures that you do and make sure that those are agreed to in your policy, particularly GLP-1s, and specificity about, like, even if it's the salt form, it may not be covered. So what level of coverage do you have within that? Same thing with peptides. It might say peptides are covered, but non-FDA approved peptides are not. Or there
exactly.
can be even line items of how much liability coverage and what it covers you for malpractice versus business insurance, and it gets real messy, and we all just want to go la, 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 I don't know, whatever, fine, and then go about our business until something bad happens, and that's the point
And
of
we'll
insurance.
we'll share out in the follow-up whatever Sharon shares with us as far as that contact with all of you.
Yep.
And let's also just clarify, peptides is now a little bit of like a blanket term, right? We're using peptides to talk about, we're kind of talking generally about GLP-1s, but there is a number of other peptides that are becoming much more popular as well. Some of them are only approved for research, right? So Sharon, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing practically with enforcement and things like that for a little clarity around peptides and what's maybe green light, yellow light, red light, any guidance there?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I'm going to kind of unpeel. That's a very, very involved question. So there's one approach to that, which we always say, and it kind of goes back to our initial discussion. Um, th there are a lot of boards that enforce bad practice. So with any of these treatments, again, you treat them like a medical treatment. You have to have that good faith exam, appropriate procedures, responsible people, the physician medical director if needed, if applicable. All of that is the same. So that is like the golden rule, regardless of what you're doing, and even more so with peptides. The other aspect of this is for research use only. So we're seeing certain states heavy crackdown. So Ohio, Michigan, we're seeing, we have a case which is they're proposing like $100,000 fine, and they're just getting started. I mean, they're making no bones about it. I mean, the company may go under. They don't care. That's not their job to keep companies afloat. Their job is to protect the public. For research use only, be super careful about where you're sourcing these things. You cannot sell for research use only products, and some states are very on top of it, like Michigan. We just had another client. They didn't even know they were buying for research use only. I mean, when they were even approached, they actually denied it. But the pharmacy board had actually subpoenaed the company, and they found that this medical spa had purchased from the company. So they went that far to actually subpoena the customers. The other big issue is it has to be US made. You cannot, there's a lot of money to be made, and some people want to import from international sources. That's an absolute no. I mean, we like to have, we try to be practical and have workarounds. That is an absolute no. So just be very careful about where you're sourcing these things. So just something to keep in mind.
And I know you can't go, like, it was a very packed question. You can't go into all the singular details of it. I do want to point out that we do have a weight loss startup class where, like, in there, we include a checklist of questions to ask the pharmacy that you're working with. That includes things like that. That includes, like, where do you source it? It talks about specifics of, like, here's an example or a template of a clinical note that really highlights that this is an individual customized treatment plan. So we have, adapted and included in our courses what we have found in our practice to be good recommendations based on the guidance that we've either previously gotten from lawyers and have decided to integrate into our practice. So we've got some great resources that are super in detailed. And obviously we can't, it would take you an hour to go in and list all of those things out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and again, just you guys are, you guys are on the front lines. So you're interacting with the pharmacies. So I think having that list of questions is invaluable, frankly. I think that's a great tool
Yeah, the
because you
nursing
really should
board
be asking those questions.
Yeah, the nursing board does not care what the rep from the pharmacy promised you or told you or you heard from another business owner. Like there was in the guess what? They're not sending you a memo when they make these changes. It is your responsibility, to proactively find out these changes. And it is rough as a business owner. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. Because it is hard to keep abreast of all these things and it's constantly changing. And so having this good legal guidance and being connected in a community where you can kind of discuss these things is super important.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I always
Yeah. And just
tell people to think about what would you feel comfortable telling in front of a judge, or like if you were standing in front of like all your friends and family, if you would feel comfortable telling the story of what you do and how you do it and feel confident in that, then maybe you're doing the right thing. But if you're like, I don't want them to know that, that should be a red flag of maybe that's not the best choice.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes. I mean, good intentions and good faith with knowledge is really powerful. So, yeah, I mean, you have to have all the tools, but you also have to want to do the right thing.
Right.
And that's just a really good perspective because it easily could get to that. So,
Well, it's a slippery slope. You think, oh, I'll just do this thing and this will be okay. And then, well, this isn't that bad. And, I mean well. And it's, I know about this. It'll be fine. Except like when you end up in front of a judge and jury or a board, it gets, they, they don't care that they do care that you meant well. But in the end, if you still broke the rules, you broke the rules.
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also view the pharmacies as them and not us.
Hmm.
Like it's not my business what they do. I'm just buying from them. Um, and yes, I mean for the most part you are shielded to a certain extent just because you're not the one who's actually doing the distributing, or compounding with low grade product, components. But you are interacting with you could be dealing with a bad actor. And in the case of this other client, if they subpoena the customers, you are in that web. So it's just, if you want to, it's always good to do the right thing, even when, necessarily it's not immediate, but just good
Yeah.
principles.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
go ahead.
No, I wouldn't dare. What?
No, I was going to say, are we going into question and answers? Because there's a lot of questions.
I was gonna say, I think we only have about 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna move us on to the Q&A section. I'm gonna take a quick look and see what's there. Ladies, please grab a sip of water. I know we have been doing a lot of talking and we have just a little bit more before we're done. So I'll give you guys a little break while I just remind you one more time that we have the Injectables EDU Summit this April, April 17th through 19th. I'm going to be there. Suzanne's going to be there. Cassie, Sharon, the whole gang. And I speak on behalf of all of us where I say we would love to have you there with us. So much so that we are offering $400 off your summit ticket. You are going to see a little code here, and we will also send that via email. If you use that, you get your ticket for $400 off, which pays for itself, really. That's girl math. Take the deal, see the summit. It's going to be the best time. And if you thought this past hour has been informative, that weekend is just going to be incredible. Everybody always walks away from it just feeling so empowered and so excited to, go back and work on their business. It's so funny to me. I've never seen a group of people out of town for a weekend so excited to go home and back to the office. But that's what Summit does for you. So you guys, please take a look. If you have any questions, I know Cassie and Suzanne offer a 15-minute or 15-20 minute mentoring call for free. So if you have any hesitations, please schedule a call with them and we will do our best to get you there to come see us because it is well worth the investment in yourself.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention, I know we have like a buy two tickets. So if you buy with a friend, like another owner, or if you bring somebody from your team, it's super discounted. And I have been telling everybody, I'm like, if you're gonna do one thing, one conference, if you are a nurse or a nurse practitioner and you are either a side gig or small practice owner in your first 5 years, you want to have already taken your introductory neurotoxin class, but you can still definitely be a beginner, then this is like the one thing to do in the year that you will just get so many takeaways and so much value. It's really filling a hole. There's a lot of crap conferences out there, and this is really the best one you could attend. So that's my big plug. We're so excited.
Yeah,
And
it's an amazing conference.
I was going to say, Sharon, I don't want to push my luck, but I know that you will be back with us. Can you give us any teaser on what we can expect Lengia Law to be covering while we're at the summit together?
Yeah, so I think we will be covering a lot of the basics as well, just that corporate practice of medicine, scope of practice. I think peptides is still going to be a big issue in April. And I'm assuming there's gonna be, there's been so much change even since January of this year. So I'm actually a little bit excited too. I mean, if there are gonna be some new states passing new bills, kind of we're really excited to see what is going to be popping up as well. So I think a lot of these themes will be touched on, and there probably will be new things coming up as well. There's a lot of regulatory activity happening right now. I mean, we could even just kind of go through audits and what to keep in mind. I think that's another big industry conversation topic right now as well. How to be prepared, you know, be prepared for an audit.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see you there, and it is going to be such a great time. But I will move on to our Q&A so that we can get some of these questions answered. We had so many great ones come in. It was um, hard to figure out exactly which one to go with, but one of the questions that I saw come in a lot was a lot of people asking for guidance specific to their state, which I know that answer is going to vary based on where they are. So I was hoping just from a higher level, what would your advice be to people looking to navigate their state specific regulation? Who exactly or where would you tell them to reach out to get the information that they need?
So, I mean, we're technically at this point, I think we're licensed in about 20 or 25 states just within our team. So we actually do work in a lot of the states. And then in states in which we're not licensed, we work with local counsel. But I think connecting with a law firm is super, super important. I think it's very, when you have a team that's dedicated to this space and updating themselves on all the laws every single day, it's pretty powerful. So regardless of whether it's with us or another law firm, I think it's super important to connect with a lawyer. We like reading regulations and getting into that nitty gritty. And I think that's especially with these states like Indiana or any of these that have these very specific requirements, very important to be on top of it. When they publish these types of things, they want you to follow them. They're it's a memo to the public that here it is. And I think just connecting with a good lawyer is really important.
I know that there's some questions in the chat box about what the membership is that I mentioned. And I can say, like, when there's been regulation changes in Virginia, that I have received like direct email from an actual human inside Langia saying, hey, this is changing, or this is positive, or be aware of this. So and there's a lot of free templates and stuff that I access through the membership. So could you just give a little bit of information about what Langia's membership includes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so basically we have these memberships. People get discounts on our hourly rates, and we also have complimentary resources. So we have this complimentary template library, which has about 200 documents that are a lot of them are patient facing. So we have, a whole bunch of consents, protocols, policies for your website. Websites are a hot topic as well. What you post on it, what your language is on the websites. We have compliance checklists. And if you buy these things piecemeal, it adds up really quickly. So having that library as a complementary resource is very it's a good value, just even from a dollar standpoint. The other thing that we include, besides doing legal work, we are lawyers. Um, we have this Get Started guide, which is kind of this business, kind of our Rolodex of contacts in the industry. And so we have, what we're talking about, some of the right insurance brokers, accountants, marketing, recruiting, OSHA issues, EMR providers. Especially if you're starting out, it's a really helpful guide for all things med spa. We have some other things that we have, obviously, because we're in the space, we know a lot of medical directors who may be helpful. We're speaking about medical directors with proximity. So there's a lot of additional items that are kind of included besides just being lawyers. So I think the membership really optimizes that.
Love it. It is cool that Sarah, who's the founder of Langia, she owns a med spa. So I think that's how originally they got specialized. But okay, let's jump into some of the questions because I know I see like a new one coming in the chat box like every 2 seconds. I'm excited to get in as many as we can.
I'm curious to know, I know that we've talked a lot about state-specific regulations, but is there also federal regulation for peptides, or is it just by the state?
So the FDA is really the kind of that federal body that would be working on, like for example, for research use only issues, are things FDA approved. That the first line of defense for that is really the distributor. So that would be more at the pharmacy level or the manufacturer level, but still, if you're buying from one of these, and again, if they subpoena the customer base, then you're getting looped into that as well. So I think what practitioners are facing more often would be state level issues with the boards, but you're not totally exempt from FDA related issues, indirectly, if you're sourcing from a questionable provider.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And then we had a question come in, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I pronounce this incorrectly, but could you tell us a little bit about retatrutide?
Retatrutide.
I tried my best. I practiced a few times before the webinar and I figured I would get it wrong no matter what. But this peptide, I assume, could you tell us a little bit about this one specifically?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of the drugs that have a tremendous promise. I don't think clinically it's there yet, but I think this is another, could be another one of the blockbuster drugs, once it's actually, fully vetted and approved. So it's a pretty exciting name. It's being thrown out quite a bit. I think it also became attractive because, semaglutide and tirzepatide were taken off the shortage list, but then there's retatrutide, which is not kind of in that conversation. And so it became
I'll pick up from that one. So retatrutide is
yeah,
the next generation GLP. It's considered a GLP-3. It hits the GLP-1 receptor, the GIP, and a glucagon receptor agonist. So it hits the three receptors, which is really exciting. It's in phase 3 trials. It's due to come out through FDA in the spring, but it's not FDA approved yet. So while you'll find it in the gray market peptides available for sale, it is still under, that gray box warning. Like you should not be prescribing it because it is not FDA approved. And where you're sourcing it from is from these gray market and for research grade. So while the actual product itself shows great promise, it will likely make it through FDA. It hasn't yet, and therefore prescribing it is not technically compliant at this juncture.
yeah. And I think having a practitioner's perspective on that is super helpful. So thank you, Suzanne. That's
Sure.
awesome.
All right. Another question we had, if you have someone who is just really looking to prioritize exactly what it is that they should be looking at when it comes to compliance, specifically for GLPs and peptides, what would you say are kind of the most important bits and pieces here?
I think just know from where you're sourcing these things. So if you're not like for weight loss, the GLP-1s like tirzepatide, semaglutide, if you're not buying, and I think semaglutide even more so, I think just given the recent activity with hims and hers, we've always kind of been hesitant with semaglutide. I would, and again, Susanna and Cassie, if you think differently, but I personally would be recommending just going directly through Novo Nordisk. I think they're really active legally. That's one exception, but I think with respect to tirzepatide and other peptides, just know from where you're sourcing. Source from, again, U.S. based manufacturers using high quality ingredients. If it's a pharmacy, if it's FDA certified, that's much better. Um, you know, like I saw something come up in the chat about gray market. Just do your due diligence. It's worth every penny and it's worth every minute. You should know from where you're buying these things.
And the thing
And
is,
obviously
as
yeah,
much as you want to be like, know where you're getting these from, you do, as a provider, I'm going to hazard to guess, you don't understand pharmacy protocol. You don't understand where they're
yeah.
getting the API, the actual raw ingredients are coming from overseas, almost 100% of them. They get shipped to the United States to make a US product. They get made into a compounded medication where they basically put it in solution and then ship it out to you. Now, how that is done is a variable quality. The amount of efficacy, actual product, extra stuff that you don't want in there, that it is actually the thing. Somehow you're vouching for this supplier as doing all the right things. And the independent testing that's showing up there is a lot of times fabricated, full disclosure. Like I've seen these COIs that
Mm.
show, oh, this is what it says it is. I'm sorry. Any chatbot can now generate these things at any juncture, and if you look, it's just a lot of smoke and mirrors. So as much as you say you do your due diligence, I hazard to guess it is inadequate.
Yeah, I think this
Yeah,
is the first time
I'm
that
sorry,
you're
go ahead.
really seeing providers realizing, maybe this was the case before, but this is the first time that it's really come across to us as providers to be responsible for
Right.
vetting the pharmacies that we are getting stuff from. And the
Yeah.
reason for that is because this stuff is not FDA approved. So while Novo Nordisk has, Wegovy is an FDA approved medication, nothing that comes out of a compounding pharmacy has ever been FDA approved. Not the numbing medication you get from there, not the medication that they put into a liquid form for a baby. The difference is there's just a ton of scrutiny on it now that had never been there before. And there's more bad actors because there's a lot of money to be made. So that's where it ends up falling back on us. And I've seen some stuff in the chat about like, well, what if you have the patient sign away their rights and say, I know that it's research and all that. The answer is still ultimately you will be, as the prescriber, you would be held accountable for that. The patient can't actually sign that away, and you're not allowed to do your own like N of 20 studies inside of your office. You're not allowed to run an unsanctioned research study in your office. So there's lots of stuff that people get away with that they maybe don't end up getting in trouble. But if it does fall on you, yes, if you're sourcing this stuff that's never been FDA approved and it's not on the market in an FDA approved version, then yes, you're not going to get sued by the company because they can't yet, but you're infringing now on other kind of bigger problems. So is it worth it legally to do this stuff? The answer, that a lawyer is going to have to tell you, and what I'm following in my practice is honestly probably not. I don't think it's worth risking your license. And we've touched the fire a little bit and had to deal with some of these investigations, and it really makes you realize like I don't want to have to deal with this. So hopefully I said that in a practical way that like resonates with you guys on here.
Yeah. It's those are really, I mean, yes. I mean, that was kind of like a master class, frankly, on like what to look for. I mean, that's really touched on a lot of the issues. Something super basic. Make sure that the distributor is licensed in your state to do business.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen investigations into for research use only be started literally just because the supplier was not licensed in the state. Such a simple thing, check. And because they weren't, again, it's a database. So they come and they check and they see for research use only vials. They probably never would have come, but for that technicality. And I think
And you
even the
need, beyond
state,
an email, you need proof of licensure in that state, not just a representative saying, oh, yeah, we can ship to you.
abs- absolutely, yes. Just because, yeah, I mean, I can put something in the mail too and ship it. Yeah,
Yeah. But
there's
that's what
usually a
they'll tell you. They're
registry.
like, oh, yeah, we ship to all 50 states. Are you licensed? They'll say, yes, we ship to all 50 states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you were saying, when you're in an audit, that's fine. they may have done something really wrong, but you're in the audit. So you
Right.
have to deal with that. You can maybe go after them afterwards, but you still have to get through the audit. So so the state's helping a little bit too. I mean, if they're vetting them and registering them, that's actually a
Mhm.
good first step.
That's helpful. Yeah. All right. Should we put a bow on things? We ran over. Of course we did.
Yes, ladies, you filled our time with so much knowledge and insights. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always such a pleasure to work with you. I actually had more on my Q&A list, but we didn't get to them, so we'll just have to have you come back with us so we can get to the rest of this information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You guys are an amazing group. I love talking with you guys and working with you guys. So look forward to it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
so much. And thank you, Suzanne and Cassie, as per usual, for joining us on this today. It was so much fun. For everyone on the line, thank you for joining us today. We will be sending you an email with a link to join our Facebook group, a link to our free resources page, a link to sign up for the mentoring call. More importantly, we will be sending you a link to buy your summit ticket with your $400 off coupon. And just a note, my legal actually called me while you guys were talking a little earlier and wanted me to remind the team we only have 50 tickets available at this $400 off price. So if you want to get this deal, I would go ahead and get it now before it runs out because we would hate for someone not to be able to take advantage of this. So now that we have covered our basis and you guys know that there are just 50 tickets at this price, once you get your discount code, you can go ahead and buy it, and then we will see you there in April. That is our webinar, you guys. Thank you so much for your time, and keep an eye out at your inbox because we will be doing another webinar next week. So the goodness just keeps on coming, you guys. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Take care.